Well, DBRS seem very positive here, Julia. I wonder where that enthusiasm comes from.
Well, I think they're hoping ultimately that if there is a yes vote and Prime Minister Renzi doesn't step down, which is the likelihood in a no vote, that then the country can carry on in the same vein that it was going. But, you know, I have to say, when you look at what's happened here and the fact that Renzi has taken what was meant to be some kind of vote on constitutional reform and made it also about him and a confidence vote on him, you've seen the leaders of the opposition parties here all galvanise support together and try and oust him. And actually one of them in particular, the Lega Nord, the Northern League leader, Matteo Salvini, said exactly this. He said, don't listen to the US banks, don't listen to ratings agencies, they're vultures. And this is precisely why voters should be voting no. And actually it's funny because as I've been going around Rome, a number of people have been telling me that actually if they're not sure about what this vote's about, if they're concerned about what it will mean going forward for electoral law change, actually they're following the party line in how they're voting. Just listening to what people have been telling me about how and why they're voting.
I'm gonna vote yes, because I think that we need a change in our nation.
It's common in Italy. If you look at social media like Facebook, there is a lot of talking about voting for a party. It's common for the Italian people to vote the yes or no based on the party they like most.
Nothing is going to change in Italy. We have the problem, or the big problem in Italy, the taxes. We have a very low, very high taxes.
On both sides, people are angry at each other, so it's really a confusing state.
A large, quite large area of population is angry against Renzi because the population think that Renzi can be the horse of Troya to the big business world big business in Italy.
So what that tells you is there's several different layers here, all sorts of reasons on both sides for voting yes and voting no. So even if we didn't have the current scepticism that we have for polls, it does make judging how this vote's going to turn out difficult. Even if we go back to the latest polls that we saw, which was some 2 weeks ago, and they did have the no vote here in the lead. I've seen a number of analysts pointing out that the degree of no here matters. Perhaps it does if you look at what this means for the view here on Renzi. But I think he's going to struggle not to step down if the no vote wins. But I do think the important point is, and everything that I've heard here, is that they will continue, the government here, to try and maintain some level of stability, not change too much. And while the other parties decide who ultimately is going to try and lead an interim government here, I think Renzi will still be at the helm here, trying to calm things down, though that doesn't mean investors will be cautious about the banks here. And I think the admission that we got from the finance minister here about the difficulties it will present from some of the banks that are trying to raise capital here is a valid one.
Julia, I want to ask you about the market reaction, because we've had a very nervous market for a number of weeks, but coming right up to the referendum, at the pointy end, we have markets actually starting to rally around some of the Italian exposures, almost less concerned about the risks. Do you think this is down to more clarity around the likely outcomes from the referendum, but also down to the ECB standing ready to do something with its bond buying program if there is a spike in yields or some market volatility?
I think we have to remember that we've always got the ECB here as a de facto backstop for sovereign bonds. So even if you see the spreads relative to bonds widen, I think that is ultimately a factor here. I think also month end plays into it. We heard, didn't we, from the stock exchange CEO here that they had extensive shorts on some of the stocks. Well, I think you'll probably get some pairing of positions into month end, and perhaps we saw that. But I would also add an additional point that perhaps, as you point out, Karen, there is some greater clarity here that this isn't going to be, you know, some stepping away. Renzi doesn't just resign and walk away, that the government here is going to try and maintain some element of stability. Perhaps he will maintain a role here as leader until they can find a replacement. So this idea that perhaps there's going to be some kind of enormous political vacuum here instantly on Monday morning perhaps isn't the case. But as I say, it doesn't mean there aren't going to be challenges, and investors won't question the ongoing commitment to what's going on as far as the bank capital raising is concerned.